All right, welcome everyone to today's 2 p.m. special partner call with our friends at Microsoft. And I see Kyle is already with us. Hello, Kyle, and thank you so much for being with us today. We are so excited to dive into the realm of multi-tenant management and all the capabilities that Lighthouse has built in since we last had you and your team on last fall. So we're really excited to do a follow-up. So with this whole Lighthouse initiative, one thing we really want to hit home with partners is that remember, your customers, especially today, are going to be doing more things than ever on their devices, whether it's connecting to various endpoints or APIs or downloading specific software or working in specific tenancies or locations. What place does an MSP to have to manage that all under one single pane of glass? That is Microsoft Lighthouse, and it's something a lot of us have been waiting for a long time. A lot of us have already been using it, and some of our newer partners have never met it before. So we're going to have our friends at Microsoft take us through the whole gamut. And Kyle, thank you so much for being here. It is great to have you.
It's great to be here. We love every chance we get to talk to your partners. We learn something every single time.
Awesome stuff. All right. Thank you so much for being with us. And without further ado, I would love to turn it over to our friends at Microsoft to start telling us about Microsoft 365 Lighthouse.
All right. Thank you, David. Thanks for making time for us. It's been a while since we've chatted with your community, but had a really good discussion last time. Had a chance to introduce Lighthouse to a few folks that hadn't met it yet. Had a chance to talk about some of the features that people loved, some of the features people had feedback around, and had some good interactions after the fact. And hopefully today we get to do something similar. I will take a bit of time to provide an overview for those of you that haven't been in Lighthouse before or haven't seen us talk about it. But I want to do something a little bit different today than kind of just take you on a tour through some of the key features and talk about the practical use of Lighthouse, how you take all of these cool tools that are built into it and put them to use so that you can deliver better service to your customers at scale. With that said, I'm going to share a screen with you. I promise we'll spend less time in PowerPoint and more time in product, but a couple slides are good to set the scene. So for those of you who don't know or haven't been there yet, Lighthouse is a free service that's about enabling MSPs like yourselves to secure and manage Microsoft 365 at scale across all of your customers. There's over 16,000 partners using it today, managing 1.3 million customers, and those numbers continue to grow at an accelerating rate as we continue to add more features and partners become more familiar with what Lighthouse can do for them. What Lighthouse can do for them? A couple things. We offer a variety of tools and features that help make it simple for you to provide security and also now leverage the power of AI in helping keep your customers healthy, secure, and productive. What you'll experience now is simplified onboarding. So it's easier for you to onboard to Lighthouse, and it's easy for you to get your customers onboarded to Lighthouse to see how their tenants are configured and understand where and how you can get them configured to your desired state. So there's a series of tools in there that detect your customer's current state, allow you to customize your ideal state, and let you know whether and to what degree your customers are configured the way you want them to be to make sure they're set up for success. And so that if they're not set up the way you want them to, you can easily close that gap and make sure that they're set the way you need them. There's a number of different scenarios that are supported in it around managing users and devices and data and making sure all of those assets are protected across all of your customers. You'll see a focus around account management. So from a sales perspective, proactive account management, allowing you to not just know which opportunities occur when, but understanding which opportunities are going to resonate with which customers and why, and to really set you up for success with the right information and the right context. You can have a great discussion with that customer, have a more effective, more efficient, higher conversion rate. And there's a series of monitoring and alerts capabilities. We know you can't be everywhere at all the time. So as you grow your business and you have more customers with more users, more devices, and more data to protect, it can become increasingly difficult to understand where the signal is in that noise. And we've got a series of tools we'll talk you through about helping you decide where you want to focus, making sure your teams are in the know when you need to engage. The journey we've been on, and we appreciate those of us like David and the team at NetLogic have been on this road with us really since the beginning. In FY21, we started and we're focused very heavily on security. We heard loud and clear from partners that security was a concern, and helping to make your customers secure at scale was something you wanted help with. And we built a series of tools that drove that for you. We then moved on to productivity and how do we help you help your customers achieve more, standardizing tasks across workloads, standardizing configurations, making sure that Microsoft 365 is configured in a way that facilitates their work instead of hinders it. This last year, you've seen us do a lot of work around account management. We've integrated the formerly known as Project Orland, now known as Sales Advisor, into Lighthouse, so that account managers have the best go-to-market strategy, resources, materials, and data that Microsoft provided before. And we've got a pretty long and ambitious list of features that we're interested in pursuing for FY25. But there, instead of telling you what we'll be working on next, I'd love to have some time where we just get to hear from you what you'd like us working on. That's kind of the overview. I'm going to pull up the actual Lighthouse now because a good demo is worth 1,000 slides. So by a quick show of hands, how many of us on the call have onboarded to Lighthouse? 5, 6, 7, down to 6 somehow, but I'll take it. All right, so it looks like a portion of us are, but there's a lot of folks that haven't been here yet, which is actually good news because the onboarding experience that our other friends went through back in the day, it's a much easier, more streamlined process now. So thank you. For those of you that are onboarded, how many of you actively use Lighthouse on a weekly basis? And it's okay, we're all friends here. You can be honest. You might use it every day, multiple times a day. You might not really use it that much, but how many of you are users on a weekly basis? So it looks like we got about half of those that have onboarded using on a weekly basis, a little bit more than half. Oh, the numbers are growing. Great. And then my last question, this interactive portion of our discussion is, how many of you feel like you're maximizing the value of Lighthouse? Like you are getting out of Lighthouse everything that it has to offer and everything you need to maximize your business. There's a lot there now. Interesting. Then there's a good discussion to be had today. So I take you to the homepage of Lighthouse. There's a lot of stuff here. But before getting into like what the different cards are and what they tell you, I'll give you a framework that I've learned from some of our more successful partners around how they think about it, which is think of onboarding as getting to Lighthouse. We'll make sure that everybody leaves here with the link so they can get onboarded, but that's the first step. And onboarding is a very simple, very quick process now. You think about GDAP setup as turning on the lantern, right? Making sure that the light is shining and you can see the things you need to see. We'll talk about deployment, which our partners have talked about as pointing the light, calibrating it, making sure that that light sees what it needs to see, and then alerts, setting the alarm so that when it sees a risk, when it sees a threat, when it sees anything that you decided is really strategically important to you or your customers, it will let the right people know about it the right way so you can take the action you want to take to keep your customers healthy and secure. So maybe big picture, we can think about it in that way. Get to the Lighthouse with onboarding, turn on the light with GDAP, point it with deployment, set the alarms with alerts, and then you're able to sit back and monitor, and your time is much better spent. You've got the signal then instead of the noise. So we start with GDAP, and what's really cool about GDAP, for those of you who haven't dug in here yet, and again, quick show of hands, we're all friends, how many of us are like all in with GDAP? How many of us have set up GDAP for a substantial portion of our customers? Very cool. That's awesome to see. Very cool. So it looks like there's more people who have dug into GDAP than have dug into Lighthouse, which is interesting because one of the key differences in Lighthouse is that Lighthouse allows you to create GDAP templates, right? So if you've set up GDAP for all those customers one by one in Partner Center, that's great. You're doing a great job to protect yourself, protect your customers, their users, their devices, their data. We applaud that. We want to make your job easier by allowing you to go into the GDAP setup wizard that you see here and create templates so that instead of doing it one by one, if you have a pretty strong strategy in place for who you want to have access to what workloads for which customers at what times, this will allow you to set that up by either taking advantage of the templates that we've developed in partnership with partners like yourself, or to customize it, choose your own adventure, and create a template that you can then apply to your different customers so that you've got the Lighthouse turned on. In a lot of scenarios where I've heard partners talk about something they didn't think was working in Lighthouse or something they wish Lighthouse would do differently, as often as not, it's that a customer didn't have the permissions they needed for Lighthouse to show them the thing they wanted to see. So what they thought was Lighthouse not working was GDAP actually working. But I realize I've got a bit ahead of myself here because you actually have Taylor from my team on the call, who is our PM for GDAP. And so I'll leave it to her to correct anything I've gotten wrong and fill in some blanks to make sure everybody on this call feels really good about what GDAP is and where we're going with it and how we're setting you up for success. So Taylor, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kyle. I'll do a quick walkthrough of the GDAP setup tool to show folks how you can use it. And just by a show of hands, how many folks on the call have used the GDAP setup wizard or tried to use it? All right, a good number of folks. So there's some people who are familiar with it. Just pulling it up. So to access the GDAP setup wizard, which is where you can go to create GDAP relationships with your customers, we've got a homepage card on the front page on the homepage, which is called GDAP setup. Right now we're in a test environment, so in this example, we see that we actually have 4 customers that don't have a GDAP relationship. And so I'll just walk through how you can use the setup wizard to create GDAP relationships and, like Kyle mentioned, GDAP templates, which is something different than how maybe if you've tried creating GDAP relationships in Partner Center, how it's a little bit different. So what you first do is you click into the tool. It'll give you an overview about what GDAP is and why Microsoft uses it. It's so that we can work towards having least privilege management and just better security overall for our customers. Then you click next.
Can I ask a quick question, Taylor? Because that's just what I do.
Sure.
When you talk about least privilege, because a lot of our MSPs are still they've been exposed to the concept of GDAP, but from a higher level, why did we move from DAP to GDAP, and why do MSPs have to go through all this pain?
All the pain.
Right?
Yes. I mean, it's interesting too, because I joined after we were doing the whole DAP to GDAP transition. But my understanding was that when we were using DAP, we were giving a lot of global admin privileges to a lot of users
Yep.
to do all of their tasks, right? Even though maybe they would only need a lower privilege role to complete a task.
Exactly. So I'm kind of echoing off Nick's comment in the chat there. What really GDAP is all about, guys, is think about all those higher level compliancy tenants you work with, right? And they were, I don't want to give DAP because it gives everyone in your organization global admin. What Taylor's going to walk us through here, which I've walked through with several of our partners as well, and a lot of my team has, is how you now solve for that major problem that DAP was that glaring issue. So even though it might feel like a few extra steps, this is what Taylor's about to show you and how to stay compliant while maintaining access.
Thanks, David. Okay, so then now what we do to start out with the GDAP setup wizard is we start by defining our roles and permissions. And this part may be a little bit different in terms of how it's organized again compared with Partner Center. On the left-hand side, you'll see a list of all of the different Microsoft Entra ID admin roles that are available. And so there's a whole list and they're in alphabetical order. And then for our columns, we've got something called support roles, which is what Lighthouse has defined as almost like different tiers. So you could almost think about them as like similar to maybe, let's say, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, whereas you're moving from left to right in this table, you're going to be granting users with higher privileged roles. So maybe I'll give you an example, like the account manager, they only have a few roles like license administrator, message center reader. And then as you move more to the right, you get to like the escalation engineer, they're going to have more of the admin roles where, again, it's not quite global admin, but they're going to be able to have more capabilities and functionalities in the customer tenants. And then the last tier two also, or what we call support role is JIT agent. And these are roles that require JIT access. So when a user is granted this role, they'd only have it for a certain amount of time. What we recommend is that you can actually click this button called Adopt Recommended Roles. And this is what Microsoft recommends as what each support role should have in terms of all the different Entra roles. Or if you've got a more, you know, a clearer vision of what's best for your organization, you can go ahead and like uncheck boxes based off of what you need. Another thing too, if you want to rename any of the support roles, let's say like you don't call them this, maybe you call it something else, like tier 1, tier 2, you can also click edit support roles and go ahead and click on the name, change the description so that it fits your organization's needs. Any questions about roles and permissions? Want to
Yeah, I
just
don't see any hands, but essentially one of the chat questions that I got in was, so essentially what you're saying from this layout is this is how an MSP would define when they go to hire a level 1 or a level 2 tech or a level 3 tech. Like these are the buckets that RBAC, which is role-based access control, is essentially saying this is how Microsoft is seeing those roles. And if you want, use our names or go ahead and call them the exact names in your job description.
Yep. Or go ahead and change them based off
Right.
of what makes sense for you. Then you click next after you do that. This is what Kyle was mentioning too with GDAP templates. So GDAP templates allow you to, as you've already done, to find the support roles and then also assign, so sorry, let me back up for a second. So when you create a GDAP template, what you can do is you can give it a name and you can select the support roles that we had just kind of defined previously and create a specific template for it. And what we're going to do is we can assign these templates to specific customer tenants later. But let's say in this example, we're in this test tenant, we've got pod A customers. This could be any grouping based off of how you define it. We want all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 support roles available for that support roles available. So we can go ahead and check all of them and save it. You could add a description if you'd like, and that's your template basically. And then what will happen next is we'll click next and we'll come to the security group section. So for every support role that you've defined for your template, you'll be asked to create a specific security group. So for example, in our Pod A customers GDAP template, for the account manager support role, we've assigned this security group called Pod A account managers. And then we've also assigned a few users to that security group too. And you'll do this for all of the support roles in your GDAP template. There's a
Taylor,
question?
if I could,
Yes.
yeah, if I could for a minute, one of the things
Hmm.
that's really tripped up some of our MSPs is something to remember about when Taylor is showing you about creating these security groups, they're being created in your tenant, right? So these are going to live in your instance of Entra ID. That's where you'll find them. And basically you're saying, hey, these groups are going to contain the people that I want to be able to do these things. And in the future, to manage those groups, all you need to do is reference your own tenant instance of groups and change users in and out there. So I've had a lot of partners that have been confused and said, well, I've created this group, but I can't find it in my customer tenant. And that's because you're creating groups in your own tenant.
Yes, that's a great clarification. So you can also, if you want to go into the Entra admin portal, you could also view all of the security groups you create in Lighthouse there too and manage them there as well. Any questions about creating security groups?
Yeah, and if there's anyone in the community that's done this before or had questions about the way it works, now is a great time to pose those questions. I don't see any, so we'll just keep flowing until questions do come up, but I'll let you guys know.
Great, thanks, David. It just takes a little time for us to load. And we would do the same thing for every GDAP template that we create. So like we saw before, we had created one for Pod A customers and for Pod B. So we'd go through the same process for Pod B customers.
So a question I have, because this might trip up some partners in the future, if you're going through this GDAP setup wizard and you already have previous security groups, will you click through those previous groups every time?
Yes, in this current
Okay.
experience, yes, you will. And the way that it's designed, when you're clicking, let's say you've already set up a template, you've already assigned a template to a customer tenant and created GDAP relationships with customer number 1. If you go through the setup wizard again, because you want to create GDAP relationships for customer number 2, it's not going to change any of your GDAP relationships for customer number 1. It'll just create the new relationships for customer number 2. Bob?
Thank you very much.
Hey, so did you say Bob?
Yes, Bob?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Is there a way to create a GDAP policy that basically gives me everything that we had with DAP, because we're a super tiny MSP right now, and it's 2 people. And I'm just trying to come up with the roles where we got everything. We still find ourselves logging into a tenant admin account because I can't get all the functionality that we necessarily need.
What kind of functionality or policy are you talking
We've
about?
we've
Maybe
just various things in Portal. I don't know anything specific off the top of my head, but I was like, there's times we've tried to use delegated access and it just doesn't give us all the options that are in the admin menus.
I think I can clarify a little bit on that based on what Bob is commenting on too, because when you're a really small MSP shop or you're a really not necessarily in customer base but in employee base, when you're a really small shop, you were really accustomed to DAP giving you global access to everything, right? And you didn't have to go through and customize those individual RBAC roles. So I think maybe is there some sort of, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong here, is there some sort of way to basically have the wizard say, hey, this is what you used to get, this is what you get now, and if you want those things, here's what you might want to add. But here's why you shouldn't add things like global admin.
Yep, definitely hear you on that. Today, our GDAP wizard is not that smart, but that is a future goal. We want to get to a place where we can provide recommendations to partners about, this is where you were previously. Maybe these are the suggested rules that you could use that would be sufficient for what you're trying to do.
I'll also take this
And these,
moment to plug the feedback page. So for those of you that
Yes.
have awesome ideas about what Lighthouse should do, it's possible that's an original idea, which is awesome. It's possible somebody else has already thought about it. Your vote counts. Please go to that page, add it if it's not there, upvote it if it is. That has a huge impact on our planning. So please, we're taking the notes on the call, but actually go vote.
Yes, and you guys will very well know in this community, if I want you to vote on something, you will not escape my notification.
It's a really great suggestion, though, Bob. We've definitely heard that from other partners too. Any other questions or comments?
I don't see any hands right now, but one thing I loved that you prefaced this demo with was the current implementation. So I imagine, as this feedback comes in, the whole experience of managing GDAP relationships ongoing, which I think is personally a kind of a hole in this wizard right now, because yes, you can go through the wizard, but the whole experience of ongoing management, I know because I'm in that super secret insider community, is being looked at. And I'm trying to essentially promise to our community that there are plans to make that a lot more fluid for MSPs on the daily.
Yes, we want that too for you. We are working on that, definitely. Yeah, I don't want to show you like it's over on the left-hand side. It's in this test environment, but maybe on a future call we can show you.
There's
I'll
some
just
cool stuff that would require an NDA, but rest assured that the team is working on GDAP, and there's some cool things coming.
Yeah, we definitely acknowledge with this setup wizard, it's really great for, first time setup, but as David mentioned, for ongoing management, that's something that we're working on internally right now to improve. Okay, I'm just gonna press forward to. So after you've, again, defined the roles and permissions, created your GDAP templates, defined your security groups for each support role, then what this wizard will prompt you to do is to select the customer tenants that you want to assign the GDAP templates to. And again, by assigning that GDAP template, you'll be requesting from that customer those specific roles and permissions defined by each support role. So in this example, we've already selected a couple. We've also, in this example, we've already technically requested the relationships, but I'll just show you. You would do this for all of your templates. And so for PodB customers, you could select the different customer tenants that you want to assign the GDAP template to. And then on the final step, it's going to give you like a list and overview, just an overview of what you're trying to do. Then when you click finish, it'll show you which of your GDAP relationships with your customers are already active and also which of them require sending an admin relationship request. So when you need to do that, you can click on that hyperlink. You can copy paste the request here and send it over to your customer so that they can approve the relationship.
So much like we used to approve those GDAP templates, that admin relationship link is essentially the same look and feel as you would do previously, but now it's going to include all of those different RBAC roles that you've selected without you having to do the additional labor there. So if for any reason Lighthouse can't do it for you automatically, that's what Taylor's showing you. This is what will come up. And if you notice, that template should look eerily familiar from back in the day, even when you used to do DAP. But we do have a hand from Bob, and I'm sorry, Bob, for speaking over you.
Not a problem. But just a point to the Microsoft guys is for most of our tenants, there are no local administrators for the tenant, for the client. They don't have a GA account, and everything comes back to us. And when things switched from DAP to when the delegated admin went away, our access got very limited, and we had to go back and jump through some hoops to get things fixed. So there is nobody at the client for me to send this to, is what I'm saying.
That's a great point, and actually an experience we run into quite a bit where for Taylor and Kyle's knowledge, like for example, this admin relationship link, which may or may not be best practice, we don't know, but we have really fancy master customer agreements as MSPs. But for these links, there generally isn't anyone in the organization that is technically able to or willing to accept that link. So oftentimes it's in our agreement that we're just going to do it on behalf of, and then we'll end up logging in with our global admin to approve that relationship, if that makes sense.
Additionally, if we do have a global admin account out there at the client, it doesn't have email access. It's a management account only.
So I'll defer to David on guidance for how to operationalize and how to strategize around the capability. From a Microsoft standpoint, what I'll say is the spirit of this endeavor is that you can request specific relationships and that your customer has absolute knowledge of what they've granted to whom and when. There are different ways for you to achieve that, but the intention behind it is that your customer has control of their data. And it sounds like you've got some processes in place to honor that. So I'll defer to David on.
Yeah, exactly. So it's essentially, Bob, if you were to take that same link and follow the same processes you've been doing, as long as whatever agreements you have in place cover your, CYA with your customers, then that's the link you would want to use to get that relationship established.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't requiring it, that they weren't assuming that it was going to be that it was going to email directly to a client, because the client doesn't have access to any of this.
Correct. Yeah, and that's actually a great point, which I've had a lot of MSPs ask me on this screen, Taylor, is, hey, if I click finish, is it all of a sudden going to bombard my customers with emails? And the answer to that is no, correct?
Yeah, it's no. It's a manual process. You've got to manually select copy to clipboard, open an email, and send that to somebody to approve.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep. Thanks, Bob.
Perfect. Thank you so much for showing us this. This was really the first step in getting all those things set up.
Of course.
Taylor, was there anything else you wanted to cover on GDAP, or should I take us back into broader Lighthouse?
That's it. And also, if there are folks on the call who are like, ooh, this isn't, how do we go about with the ongoing management portion? Like David mentioned, we are working on that as a team. We just haven't released that updated experience quite yet. But
and if you are an MSP, and if I'm speaking out of turn, Taylor, please let me know. But if you are an MSP that is interested in being, on the front lines and being an insider and getting bashed over the head with these new features, please let me know, because I could put you in touch with Taylor and Kyle, and we can get you in that community where you can start testing these new experiences.
Yes, definitely. We'd love to have you.
All right. Thank you, Taylor. I had a couple other things. I want to make sure we show you some new stuff that's out there. And I also want to make sure we have time to hear from you instead of just talk to you about what you want in this tool. But I'll take us to the baselines page. So for those of you that are maybe less familiar with managing security at scale and want to understand how that should be done, I don't think you're on this call because the NetLogic team would have already solved that for you. But hypothetically, you would be able to just leverage our default baseline and say, okay, this is great guidance from Microsoft, built in partnership with partners like NetLogic to define how you should go about making your customers healthy and secure and productive. And there's a growing set of baselines that are here. Things like requiring MFA, blocking legacy auth, setting up device enrollment, all kinds of goodness. For the partners who are very advanced, very sophisticated. They know how they want different customers configured in different circumstances. You also now have the ability to create custom baselines, which you might do based on a particular industry, a particular security offering. And you can do that one of two ways, either by cloning tasks from another baseline. So you might say, I want to require MFA for admins the same way I did it here. Or the other way is you can extract a configuration from another of your customers. So if, for example, instead of how Microsoft has put conditional access policy management in the default baseline, you can say, I want to go to this customer of mine that I worked hard at, and I want to grab this policy, the best conditional access policy of all time, and I want this to be part of my baseline. So here you can choose your own adventure. You want the default baseline, there's a bunch of great stuff in there. Your customers are going to be healthy, secure, and productive. You want to build from scratch? That's great. You can do that too. You want to take the default baseline, clone the entire baseline, and then just add a couple ingredients of your secret sauce. You'll be able to do that too. You're good to go. Once you've got your baseline set, right? Now it's time to look at these tenants and whether or not they are configured properly. But I'll show you two other cool things on the tenants page that are, I think, underutilized. One of them is tags. So here you can filter by different tags. You can manage by tags. So you might have tenants that you want to tag for any number of scenarios, whether it's the type of work that's being done with them, whether that's the type of relationship you have with them, the type of service agreement that you have in place with them, whether they're your friends of your CEO. That might be a good thing to have a close eye on and be able to filter by. So tenant tags, underutilized, very cool thing. The other thing that I don't think everybody realizes here yet is that once you have the GDAP permissions set up, you're one click away from being able to log in to any of the administrative portals for any of these customer tenants via delegated access. Show of hands, who knew that you could do that? Not very many of you. Show of hands, who thinks it's very cool that you're one click away from any management portal from any of your customers that you have permissions to? It looks like we've got a handful of people who think that it's very cool that you can access any of the admin portals for their customers in one click. Inexplicably, there are a few folks who didn't have their hands up. So if you have any feedback around that, let us know and we'll figure out how to do it better. But what we've heard from most of our partners is once they realize that's there, it's a game changer, makes it very easy and efficient for them to manage across their different customers.
We've still got a couple of hands left over. I just want to make sure. Cora or Casey, did you guys have any questions on this experience?
My question is, would at any time in the future of Lighthouse, this will replace the CSP admin agent, the ability to remote in and log in to other tenants? Currently, for our technicians and engineers, as a CSP members, they get the admin agent role, and then they can sign in from the CSP portal to any other clients and use like Azure or Lighthouse, or sorry, not Lighthouse, but Azure or Dynamics or Exchange or any other portals, admin portals. Is there a plan to decommission that and then have everybody goes into Lighthouse to use the same feature?
So I'm not in a position to comment around what features in other products of ours are going to get deprecated. The answer there, truthfully, is I don't personally know. I know the Partner Center team also works hard and cares a lot about making it easier for partners to do their work. So I would assume that we'll both maintain our efforts to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, that's good. Thank you.
No problem. Well, if there are more questions, please chime in. We're all friends.
Oh, I got one from Andrew.
Hi.
Hey, quick question. So it looks like Microsoft is trying to copy SIP basically, because the partner portal has generally sucked really bad. Is the speed much better in this? I'm checking it out and it seems to be. Does it not suffer the same issues as the old partner portal, where you click to go into the Exchange Admin Center and it's not doing it right? That sort of stuff.
So I'm not aware of any specific time latency comparisons that we've done with other tooling or with older capabilities. What I can say is our team cares a lot about latency, monitors it regularly, is alerted when things aren't happening as fast in Lighthouse as they should be. And we absolutely welcome feedback if you're running into issues with latency. But I just wouldn't be able to speak to how it compares to some of the other tooling that's out there that we've had in the past.
No, it's quite a bit quicker than the partner portal. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yeah,
always
that
been
actually,
frustration.
and
Go ahead,
actually,
David.
what Andrew, with what you're saying, I noticed those improvements when, do you remember, Kyle, like maybe it was a couple of Lighthouse community calls ago, you guys talked about adding
Yep.
more resources and updating the queries. I've noticed a huge improvement in the way Lighthouse performs versus the way Partner Center performs directly.
Absolutely. That's what I'm seeing right now. I mean, Partner Center was just nobody used it. That's why everybody used GA to log into their tenants, because Partner Center, every time you wanted to do something, was down, broken, or otherwise just didn't work right. And
Yep.
through Lighthouse, this is working smooth as a finely tuned Swiss watch.
Nice. Looks like we've got Dev back up. I don't know who you are, Dev, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay. So hi. So my question was, is that if when you go to tenant and you set up a GDAP relationship as it's said in the demo, means in the previous, we are seeing there are 45 roles which is assigned to that particular tenant, means you get 45 roles GDAP set up. So, and I have given access to myself, means in the on the template I added myself as an admin group, means on that. So if that is not a security concern, if we have so much of roles, means how much role is sufficient to access or to manage any account efficiently? So right now you have in tenants 45 roles assigned to yourself as a GDAP manager.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I got the question out of that. Is the question how many roles
Right.
are necessary to do work in Lighthouse?
Yeah, like if you go to tenant and you set GDAP roles to 45, right?
Oh, so kind of like, so correct me if I'm wrong, like what are, like, there's a lot of roles. Like if you were to go with the default GDAP setup template and you were to assign all those, you get a whole bunch of roles, you know, for SharePoint, Power Platform, all those different things. Are you essentially asking, which my team has also asked me, what are the bare minimum roles we actually need to select to light these features up in Lighthouse?
And I just want to add one thing, like when you set up GDAP from Lighthouse, it automatically select all those roles.
Mhm.
So, and if we select it from the partner portal and through that admin from the partner portal, then we have a choice, means whatever role we want to select. So what is the better way? By Lighthouse, we have access to the, means we can, it is lot of GDAP roles we can assign to ourselves from the Lighthouse. Can we change it, or it's better from the partner portal?
I think, and this is probably where I'm going to lean on Taylor a little bit, and Kyle too, but mostly Taylor. This comes back to where Taylor was customizing the different roles and levels, where you'd be able to assign those account managers, all these different things. And I think it has to do, Taylor, with how Partner Center presents them as individualized roles, like where you could select them all, and then Lighthouse is sort of bulking various roles together when you'd select them through the GDAP wizard. And I think that's where the confusion's coming in.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with Partner Center.
So
But
essentially, like when you go through the GDAP wizard and you select, you know, under account manager and you have that list of roles, that actually generally includes about, you know, 5 or 6 different GDAP, you know, RBAC roles, right? Would
Yep.
there be a way to sort of display what those roles might be within the wizard? Because there might be some individual roles that an MSP just doesn't want.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing, if my account goes means is my account get hacked. So if I have 45 roles, then doesn't mean that that hacker get all the access for all the tenants under my account.
that is a good question. I would have to follow up on with you for those questions, Dev.
All right.
I am keeping a note of all these. Don't worry, Dev.
Yeah. Do you want? Does it make sense for me to go through you, David, or should I? Or
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to post to the community, if you want to be in the community, if you funnel it through me, I will make sure all the appropriate parties are connected.
yeah, if you could.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, David.
I had a couple quick things I'll show you. And there's a few things I I'd love to spend time on, but we don't necessarily have time. David, just for what it's worth, if you or your partners would like to have us back at some point in the near future to share more goodness,
I'll think about it, Kyle. I'll think about it.
Know. But couple quick things to show you. One is if you go to the account management page, you can search across all of your customers at once. That's a very cool thing that makes many of our partners happy. So please take advantage of that. Another cool capability is that you can see high-level user data across all of the customers that you manage. How many are licensed? How many are global admins? How many are guest users? How many of the user accounts are inactive, and so on. And it'll link you directly to pages where you can take action on those scenarios. One of the key things that partners want to do as soon as they get their GDAP permissions assigned and they have their baseline configured is work to get MFA set up. So there are tasks in the default baseline that will create a conditional access policy to require MFA for all admins and then separately for all users. And on this multi-factor authentication page, you'll be able to see a tenant by tenant breakdown where we'll be able to tell you what the MFA status is, what the next steps would be if there are conditional access policies requiring MFA. We'll be able to list those here and link you directly to them in the Entra portal. Where there are users that have yet to register for MFA, it'll tell you exactly which users those are. And you can take one of those users and either exclude them or just block their sign in. And you can also create an email right here within Lighthouse to nudge them and let them know that you would like them to go ahead and register for MFA. And from an auditing perspective, you have line of sight to see which users have been excluded from MFA requirements in each tenant to make sure that you're comfortable with the associated risk. I want to see if there's any questions about.
There was an overall question, Kyle, that I
Yes.
think merits addressing before we close, at least in the last few minutes here. And I think it's a good one. So partners have asked questions. What is the underlying technology that makes Lighthouse possible? Like, what is it? Is it an app? Is it a connector? Are they installing an agent? Like, how is Microsoft pulling all this data together in one place? And what should they look into to know about how all this works?
Which power I think of the Microsoft graph.
That's the graph. Yep. That is the graph. So if you're an MSP wondering, if I deploy Lighthouse, is there going to be an agent on my customer's computer that they see? Is there going to be a pop-up? No. This is all data that's already accessible via what we've been talking about for many years. And for those of you that are new, a concept called the Microsoft graph. And the graph is essentially pulling all of these various data endpoints together in one place. Lighthouse is essentially the portal that's making that graph data from code into something actionable for you.
Yes, indeed. Two last things, and then I want to hear from the community. One is, want to make sure people are aware of the risky users page. This is the most popular feature in Lighthouse. And so this is a great way for you to see easily across all of your different tenants where you have users that are displaying risky behavior that you might want to engage around. And then the last piece is once you've got GDAP set up, right? You've got your baseline assigned, you've got your tenants configured. Now Lighthouse is able to see everything you want it to see for all of your customers. What's important is the ability to make those insights actionable, right? The signal from the noise. And so what you have here are alerts. You can see what type of alerts with what severity are happening across your customers. And you can make alerts. So you can make your own alert rules where we'll say, based on what we want to see, which could be, I want a risky user. Let's make a rule that anytime that's found, an alert's going to get created with high severity. And I can either send it to, I can monitor that for all my tenants, or I can monitor it for certain tenants with certain tags. So let's say I only want to do this for the friends of the CEO, because I really don't want to hear about that from my CEO. And I can say, send it to me. I can say, send it to a group. I can say, send it to a ticketing system. And in a matter of seconds, I now have Lighthouse specifically monitoring for specific criteria and sending specific people a specific alert so they can take action and maintain customer health and security. And frankly, I could spend hours more talking about cool stuff in Lighthouse. I think our team definitely has work to do around making it easier for partners to understand which capabilities in Lighthouse they should think about using first, how the different capabilities complement each other, which ones might be a higher priority for you than others, because there's a lot of goodness there. But with the few minutes that we have remaining, I want to do more listening instead of talking. And for the people who have used Lighthouse, would love to understand any feedback you have around how we could make it better, or how you use it, what you wish we would do. For those who haven't seen it, love to hear a little bit about what you're excited to check out, or what you're curious about, whether or not we have on our roadmap for FY25 and beyond.
Looking at the chat here. So as far as at a glance is concerned, we would like to have licensing information within Lighthouse. Instead of having to log into each tenant to grab that, is there an option or a feature that allows us to see what licenses are assigned without having to guess?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One is that within Sales Advisor, you can see for all of your tenants what subscriptions they have, how many seats, and when they expire, specific to any particular tenant and its users. There's a couple different ways to access information, but one of the ways that I see partners use the most is you can see the deployment progress by user. So here I can take a look at all of the deployment tasks that are assigned to this tenant via its baseline, and I can see which users are compliant with those tasks and to what degree. And I can see here where users require additional licensing to become compliant. But I can click here, as well as in a number of other areas throughout Lighthouse, and it'll open the user details panel directly from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, where you can view and manage all kinds of fun information, including licenses and apps.
And you can even make changes right from there if you needed to, which is amazing. So the one thing that when Kyle was showing you that user search earlier, this is the flyout that pops up when you click on a user. So you can do just about everything you can do as if you were to sign in. But one thing I want to call out that Lighthouse does that if you were to sign in with your Break Glass Global Admin account does not, which a lot of us as MSPs have been facing as regulations have changed, especially here in the US. As regulations have changed, it is no longer feasible to assume that an auditor will accept an audit log that says admin@contoso.com or admin@netlogic.com did this. Those auditors need to see which employee at NetLogic or Contoso did that action. If you are doing these functions through Lighthouse, it is going to use your GDAP relationship. And when that auditor pulls that audit log, it is going to directly associate it back to a user account inside your tenant, which is what you ultimately want. And that's what Lighthouse helps facilitate.
Yep.
We got a hand from Bob. Bob, what's up?
One more question. We ran into a problem with a tenant a couple months ago where we enabled secure MFA, which blocked basically all logins because we didn't have token-based authentication. Does Lighthouse still, will Lighthouse bypass conditional access and still get into the tenant?
Through the admin on behalf of links? Is this what we're referring to?
Right. So does that bypass any conditional access rules that are set up on the tenant?
It does. And David, keep me honest here. It does if
it's done. Yeah, if it's done in the thing. Yes, there is a way. I don't know if Kyle wants to tell you how to bypass rules, but I certainly will on a screen share. But there is a way, yes. And actually, I went over this with a couple of partners that have been doing location-based access control. And if you're doing location-based access control, there is a way within conditional access to exempt your partner tenant so that all of your RBAC and GDAP relationships are able to bypass those specific rules.
Okay. Yeah, because it was weird because on the other one, it was like Nerdio control still got in, but nothing else worked.
Yep. And I know Will. He's a great guy. He's doing the trick I'm doing. Awesome. We do have a question. What types of clients should I GDAP and add to Lighthouse? Just managed IT or also one-time project clients or consulting clients? And I think that actually brings up a bigger question is if I'm in a limited consulting engagement, GDAP provides new flexibility that DAP did not, where you can actually time your request. So realistically, I mean, Kyle and Taylor's perspective, GDAP, from my point of view, should be established with every customer that an MSP is engaging with, and you can control the window for which that is active. Am I off base there?
That is correct. That's one of the benefits of GDAP is it's specific to workload, and it can be time bound.
Nick?
I actually have a question that kind of builds off of Chris's earlier. So forgive me if it's a little redundant. It's based on those licenses. Is there any plans for the Lighthouse team building out a place where we can see by SKU the licenses we provide? For example, as a line item, I'm looking at business premium. I know I have a total of 1,000, but I can see all the different tenants that I have just that license in. Because some of our MSPs they'll get clients where they don't just have the single SKU they want, and they have all these different add-ons, all these different SKUs, and it's spread like a wildfire. Is that ever something we might see in Lighthouse?
Yeah, without getting too specific, because we're short on time and not everybody has an NDA, but there are some cool things we'd love to be able to tell you about. One of the things that our team is heavily investing in the near term is expanding what you can see about each tenant. And so providing more, better, deeper, more actionable insights around each of your customers. And so if there's strong opinions about what you would like to know about your customers that you don't know today, what you want to know about their digital estate, their licensing, their devices, please let us know, because we might be working on that and we might not be in need of your feedback.
Thank you very much, Chris, or Kyle. I appreciate it.
All right, we are at 3 o'clock. Kyle and Taylor, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We will, of course, share this recording, share all the information with the community, and we'll have you guys back on hopefully within another 3 or 6 months, whenever you're willing to come and tolerate us again. We love having you, and thank you so much, everyone. We will see you all out there in the cloud next week.
There's so much cool stuff we didn't get to talk about. Thanks for having us. Bring us back when you're ready for it. But
thanks. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.